Please rewind this cassette.
Hey guys, Pat from Please Rewind here. Welcome to the return of Box Office Addict after a long hiatus due to COVID-19. Honestly, it felt like I was the host of a television show and I got canceled by a network. And then I went to another network and I'm doing a new show now. I can't remember the last time I did Box Office Addict. Was it March? And that episode got taken down due to a copyright strike, which was on the movie Bloodshot because I had the poster of the movie in my thumbnail, and the company that designed the poster got the video taken down and put a strike on my channel, which is why I haven't been able to live stream for 3 months. So that was bullshit. Anyway, I thought to come back, I was waiting for a particular movie because there have been films released recently. Also, I could have been doing Box Office Addicts on the release of older films. If you didn't know, over the last few months, a lot of theaters had been showing films like Back to the Future, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., Ghostbusters, and so on in order to get people to come to the theater. And some of them actually did quite well. I believe Jurassic Park did pretty well. But now we're going to be talking about Tenet, the Christopher Nolan film, which was much anticipated all throughout the year. And, you know, the discussions over the opening weekend were, is it going to open as good as Inception? Is it going to open even better than that? Is it going to disappoint? All of that became meaningless as the months went on, and we debated whether or not the film would even be released. The theaters officially opened back up in the U.S. a few weeks ago. I believe Unhinged, the Russell Crowe movie, was the first wide release since some of the restrictions have been lifted. So here we are. We're going to focus on Tenet mainly and how it performed and how it's performing internationally, because I believe in China the box office has been doing really well for a lot of movies. In the U.S., this is not a good sign. This weekend is not the best results that one could have hoped for. I think it's better than worst case scenario. Like, I'm surprised how well the movies actually have done. And, you know, but we'll go movie by movie. So I'm just going to skip My Brother's Crossing and Words on Bathroom Walls because I don't give a shit. The SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, $345,000, an 18% drop in 300 theaters. Now, the last SpongeBob movie that came out was a huge hit. It made over $300 million worldwide. So I think this movie could have done well if it had been a regular year. It's pretty shocking that they even released this. So the widest it ever went was 326 theaters. It opened to 865,000. It's made $3.4 million. I don't know how much this movie cost. The previous SpongeBob movie cost $75 million. So if it cost anywhere around that, these aren't the best results that they could have been hoping for. But what are you going to do? I mean, really. The Personal History of David Copperfield brought in $361,000 this weekend with a 24% drop. So this is actually doing okay. 1.1 million, 11 million worldwide. Perhaps with the international box office coming in, this movie might be able to end up not being a total disaster at the box. You know, once again, you have to consider everything. I don't know how well this movie would have done even without COVID-19, but it is very well reviewed. It opened to 475,000 over 1,300 screens, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. A lot of people are saying that the movies now, it's more of a marathon. It's not a sprint. Movies have to play over a long period of time. Unhinged, starring Russell Crowe. This was the movie that was bringing back the theaters. It opened to 601,000 in a limited opening to 299 theaters. Overall, it's made $11 million domestically and $23 million worldwide. Honestly, I don't know if this film would have done that well, once again, without the pandemic, but it certainly would have done better than this. I mean, 11 million is not bad because the weekday box office has been better during the pandemic. Like, I saw Tenet on a Monday. So you have to look at that. It's not about the opening weekends anymore. It's about the day-to-day box office. But honestly, I don't think 11 million is that bad. I think this movie's doing okay. I think it's doing better than I thought it was going to do. The New Mutants. I love that this film was supposed to come out, 3 years ago, from the director of Fault in Our Stars, who's working on the Stand miniseries. And then, of course, it got pushed back and reshot and pushed back. And then Disney acquired Fox, and then it seemed like the film was never going to get released. And so I thought they just were going to shelf this thing forever, because it was actually a pretty cool idea. Let's do a horror movie version, storyline in the X-Men universe. And it's got a lot of actually pretty well-known actors in it. But what I find so hilarious about this is that this is a film that got pushed back so much and seemed like it was never getting released, and then they decided to release it during the pandemic because I think they were like, fuck it, we don't want to release a movie that's going to lose money. They knew this was going to lose money no matter what, so why not release it right now as kind of a test to see how many people will go to the movies? And that just seems like exactly what happened here. This was like a test movie because they didn't care if this movie made money or not because they already knew they were going to lose money on it. Even without the pandemic. I mean, the running time's 94 minutes. This movie was going to bomb either way. In fact, I think the opening weekend of 7 million is not too far off from what it would have opened had it not been for COVID-19. But it's hard to say that when you think about Tenet being released. So far, it's made $19 million worldwide. I don't know what the budget for this movie is. I'm sure that finding an accurate budget for this movie is impossible at this point. But either way, it's not doing that well. Now let's get to the big movie to talk about. Tenet already was released internationally and brought in $53 million. And this is its opening. I don't know if this is a collection of the entire week. It must be, or the week, or is this just the weekend? I'm not really sure because, like I said, I went to go see this film on Monday. So, last Monday. So I'm guessing that they don't know the full weekly box office yet, and we'll have those totals tomorrow. But I could be wrong on this. And by tomorrow, I mean today, because when you're watching this, it's going to be Monday. So Tenet opened at $20.2 million. This is obviously not a good opening weekend for a movie that cost $225 million and is directed by Christopher Nolan, whose last several films have all been big hits. Dunkirk opened at $50 million, made $525 million worldwide. Interstellar opened at $47 million, brought in... Now with the China release, I think it's made $700 million worldwide. And of course, you have the Batman movies, the last two, which made $1 billion, and Inception, which made $830 million. So there was a lot on the line with this movie, and critically, it did not get the reception that I think a lot of people expected it to get. I think a lot of people thought this was going to be a very acclaimed movie, and it got good reviews, but not anything spectacular. It's very mixed with a lot of people. So, of course, with the budget being that big and some marketing and all that, this isn't great. But having said that, the caveat here is if you really look at this with everything going on with the pandemic and then reopening the theaters and it only being in 2,800 screens when it would have been in, I'm assuming, over 4,000 screens, and, theaters are also not at full capacity. When I saw this in the theater, you had to sit 6 feet apart and every aisle was closed in between. So I don't know if they're at 50% capacity. I'm not exactly sure what the rules are. So you have to take that into consideration too. People can't fill up the theaters to go see this movie. So when you look at it that way, that the theater cannot be filled up, which will directly affect the box office of the movie. It's in less theaters, and a lot of people are still scared to go out and see a movie in theaters due to COVID-19. I would say the $20 million opening weekend's pretty good. I mean, honestly, when you look at all that, I think this is a sign that this movie would have done much, much better had it not been for this. I definitely think this movie could have opened to $60 million. Now, how it would have held after that, the word of mouth, I'm not sure. We'll have to see with this. But the word of mouth might benefit the movie during this crisis because there's not going to be other movies released for the most part. This is going to be the only big movie like this that I know of. Maybe November, James Bond, for at least a couple of months. This is going to be the film you're going to have to go see. So... best case scenario, 100 million domestic, I would say. I do not think this can make 200 million or 300 million domestically. I mean, maybe, but that seems crazy to me. I'd said in a video previously that I thought they should have just released this on a streaming service, but I have to say, this is doing better than I thought it was going to do. Um, and then the international box office really isn't that bad. The movie has currently brought in $126 million internationally, which gives it a total of $146 million worldwide. Now, really, I mean, all things considered, to have $150 million worldwide on this movie, I mean, Warner Brothers, I think this is a win. This could have just been a disaster. This movie could have only made $100 million total worldwide. And the fact that it's making a lot of money right now, it looks like this movie could make $300 million worldwide. So they're not going to break even on this movie. They would need to make $400 million at a minimum, I would say. And I think they were obviously expecting this movie to make $700 million or $800 million. I think the worst case scenario would have been like $500 million would have been a low total for this movie. I'm thinking they thought they had another Inception on their hands here. And, you know, there's just too many things to debate here. Did the movie make more money with hype because of COVID? How would it have done in a regular year? Would the reviews have been different had it had not so much pressure on it because of COVID-19? I don't really know. There's just a lot of unanswerable questions with this movie. Christopher Nolan was very steely in the fact that this had to be released in theaters because he made it to be in theaters. I saw it in 70 millimeter. It was beautiful. But really, I honestly don't think 20 million's that bad with everything considered, and in particular in the US. And if this movie ends up making 300 million plus worldwide, and then you have to think about it home video release, and a lot of people that didn't catch it in theaters will rent it, although I'm sure it's going to be torrented all over the place. And beyond that, I think that if it goes on HBO Max, now the real thing here is that Christopher Nolan was going to get money up front. He's supposed to get, what is it, like 20% of the first dollar gross or something like that. So the studio isn't, if this makes any profit, Christopher Nolan is the first person to make money off this movie, if I'm correct about that. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. So that means Nolan's the first one to get paid. So I don't know how long it's going to take for this movie to really make money for the studio. Probably a few years before this really turns a profit. But it could win a few Oscars because obviously other films aren't going to be released for the most part. So I could definitely see this winning special effects, sound editing, not mixing, because the sound mixing was pretty bad. It could win cinematography. It could win film editing. It could win score. I mean, there's a lot of things that this movie could win at the Academy Awards. So there's that possibility that could really help it. This is just an unfortunate thing. This is another... It's a bittersweet return to box office Addict because I feel like I'm not getting the legitimate... Well, it's not that I feel, it's a fact that I'm not getting the legitimate box office of this movie. No way would this movie have just opened at $20 million. I'm not saying this film would have been a huge hit. I'm not. Even though Christopher Nolan has a good track record. It may have only opened to 45, 50 million, which would have been slightly disappointing. But it would have never opened to only 20 million. That's simply because they can't fill the theaters up and it's not enough screens and people are scared. So it's tough to tell how well this would have done, and it's tough to know how many people were scared to go out and see it. Is this what's the max capacity that we could get in theaters? Like if every theater that's open was filled out and every screening sold out, maybe somebody could do the math for me. What would be the opening weekend for a movie if the best case scenario? I'm not sure. I'm sure I could Google that, but I'm a little bit too lazy for such things. So 20.2 million. Like I said, this is a marathon, so maybe this film can bring in 100 million domestically. I think that's going to be tough. I would say $80 million is where it might end up. But once again, I don't know. That's... You know, typically when I made predictions on the show or break something down, there was things to go off of. This is, you know, a new era. We don't know how theaters are going to recover from this. We don't know if people are going to fully embrace the cinematic experience again. And we don't know if movies will be making enough money for studios to have the financial incentive to release them. at least until there's a vaccine, or at least until the election's over, or that we're so divided as a country. It's just not a great time for movies in many aspects. But I would say the optimism, the silver lining here is that the movie's made $150 million worldwide. So there's clearly still money to be made at the international box office. People are still going to the theater. If this film just didn't have such a big budget, this is just such an expensive movie. If this had been a $50 million movie, maybe they could have got the same results with Christopher Nolan's name. I'm not really sure. And you got to think that the biggest name in this movie is Robert Pattinson and Kenneth Branagh, so it doesn't have that lead like Leonardo DiCaprio. Also, this is the first blockbuster to be released since, Bad Boys? So there's another thing with that. How successful is this right now just because it's the only big movie to be released right now? All those other movies I don't think would have done well, excluding SpongeBob. Then the question comes in, is Bad Boys for Life going to be the highest grossing film of 2020? Because can Tenet pass the $419 million that movie made? I'm not really sure. I think that's debatable, but let's look at what Deadline has to say about this, because they would certainly have a deeper analysis than me and would have more information. So it made $30 million in China, and Mulan is kicked off in some territories right now, although I believe Mulan is still just going to be released in America on Disney+. So let's see. Since movie theaters closed down nationwide because of the pandemic, in particular the top 3 big circuits, Tenet has been long heralded as the comeback of theaters, the tentpole that will get exhibition back on its feet. There is no context for these numbers, as it's not your typical Labor Day weekend release. We're just beginning to realize what it's like to see a tentpole opening in motion in a world where 8 of the top 10 theaters from Nolan's last movie, Dunkirk, aren't open. That's another factor I totally forgot to mention. New York and Los Angeles, which the populations are so huge in those states, in those cities, Los Angeles and New York City, but the state of California, that's where so much of the money for the box office comes in. So that's a great point. If Los Angeles had its theaters open, but Los Angeles has been locked down, very strictly locked down for a long time, this movie, I think, certainly would have made $30 million, if not more. So I totally forgot about LA, San Francisco, and New York. That's a point that I'm glad I read this, because if you don't know, just because of the population and the amount of theaters and ticket prices, a lot of the time when you see the numbers come in at the box office, a huge amount of that number comes from those cities. Nolan movie earning a B. The director typically earns a B+ or an A. Remember, only 65% of the domestic marketplace is open, with auditorium capacities ranging from 25 to 40. So they're not even at 50% capacity. 40% is the highest capacity. Tenet has a 79% Rotten Tomatoes audience score and a 74% rating. The latter rating needs to be taken with a grain of salt, as Los Angeles and New York critics weren't cleared to see the movie in advance. See, the pick was opening in the market. That makes me wonder if the film would get even worse reviews if the LA and New York critics had saw it, because it's not getting great reviews. If you want to know how to open the tentpole during a pandemic without New York and LA, here's the playbook, which Warner Brothers just wrote, a reverse of the old 1970s platforms where big picks would open in those major city markets and make their way across the U.S. from there. See, that's the thing. Movies used to play a long time back in the day, and they would also open gradually. Like, you wouldn't get a movie in your area for a long time. You maybe would be a few months later that the movie would come to your area. So movies... a movie being a big hit back in the day, it wasn't this immediacy that we live in now. It was a gradual thing. A movie could be in theaters for well over a year back in the day. I mean, if you just talk to anyone who was of an older generation, they'll tell you how, the same movie, you could see it 9 months later, and it would still be making money. Let's see. Tenet here in the States made $2.8 million from 272 IMAX auditoriums through Monday, repping the large format exhibitor's largest Labor Day opening ever, despite LA, New York, and San Francisco being closed. The figure represents 14% of Tenet's domestic number. 14%? Fuck, from IMAX. That's insane. Let's see. Trying to see if there's anything here I'm missing. They're just talking about Mulan now. I wonder if there's any comments on this. Don't know. Okay, so that seems to be all they're saying about Tenet. Let me see if I missed anything here. Tenet played in IMAX, Dolby, and motion seats. The movie is playing on a majority of screens at the average multiplex. Some independent chains, we're told, are being charged a 63% rental by the studio. Damn, I went to go see it in an independent theater here in Columbus. Huh. Currently, Warner Brothers' Wonder Woman 1984 is the next big movie on October 2nd, unless it moves. Then it's Universal's MGM's Candyman on October 16th, Disney's Death on the Nile on the 23rd, and Disney's Black Widow, which would have certainly been a big hit, which was part of their Tenet pre-show trailers yesterday on November 6th exhibition, will really need Black Widow. So Disney, please don't pull a Mulan and send this pick to Disney+. Disney has reported Mulan's Disney Plus revenue figures, and I imagine they won't until earnings call together with the pick's overseas box office. I mean, I think Mulan would have opened at 90 million. I really do, just because all of the Disney live-action remakes, and Wonder Woman would have certainly opened to over $100 million. So, yeah, we'll just have to see if they do release Wonder Woman and Black Widow, how those will perform. Christopher Nolan was already going to go down in history as a very important filmmaker and one that stood up for cinemas and film, and this will be a very debated, looked back on moment in history, and you don't get to choose how you are remembered, so I don't know how people are going to feel about this 20 years from now. This is something that's never really happened before, so Christopher Nolan is the director that put the first big movie back out in cinemas after a pandemic, at least an American movie. And he took that risk, and we're going to see the results of this. The results so far are a $20 million opening weekend, which would have been a great opening weekend 35 years ago. This is definitely the lowest Christopher Nolan opening weekend since The Prestige, I guess. The Prestige probably didn't open this well. And that movie came out in, 2006? So, 14 years. So yeah, Christopher Nolan, he got what he wanted. He got the movie released in theaters. He took the hit. He took the hit at the box office that this film is most likely not going to turn a profit. And he stood up for what he believes in. And even if you don't agree with it, you didn't have to go see the movie in the theater if you were scared of getting sick. Nobody's forcing you to go see this movie. That's a big part of this. You can't be like, oh, people are getting sick because of Christopher Nolan. He didn't tell you to go see the movie. You choose that yourself. So I think you have to respect him that he supported the theaters, which makes him consistent. I think streaming's the future, regardless. I think it's going to happen inevitably in the next decade. But, you could say what you want about the man, whether you like the movie or not, whether you like his films or not, whether you think he's pretentious and over analytical and so on, but I respect that he tried to save theater as best he could with this movie, and it doesn't look like it's going to be enough, but hopefully it keeps the cinemas from complete annihilation, because if they had stayed completely shut down for the rest of the year and no big movies had come out, if it had just been movies like Unhinged, I don't think they would have been able to recover going into 2021. So hopefully this keeps, half the theaters going through the rest of the year. And if there's not a spike in cases, hopefully this encourages other studios to start releasing movies, and then people will feel safer. And then who knows, if people start feeling safer about going to the theater, maybe this movie will end up making more and more money. Maybe next weekend it'll make like $18 million, and the weekend after that it'll make $15 million. Maybe it'll hold really well because people will go see it in waves and differently, and it won't be everybody goes to see it the first 3 days. Maybe a lot of people won't catch this movie but a month from now. Although I'm not sure. I don't know if this movie has that kind of word of mouth. I don't really feel like it does. But we'll have to see next weekend what really happens. So thank you for watching Box Office Addict 104. Tell me what you think about this. There's really so much to discuss here. Do you think this was the right decision by Warner Brothers? Do you think it was too soon? Do you think it was too late? Do you think they should have released this back in July? like they originally wanted to. What do you think about the LA? I have a friend in LA who tells me how it's crazy. You can't go see a movie there. Um, I mean, there's so much to break down here. I could do 2 hours on this, really, because you could go through everything and then talking about Mulan, and um, I'm very interested in seeing what happens next weekend. I have not been intense like this about Box Office. Like, Box Office Addict was always a happy show celebrating my love for the analytical side of box office and sort of being obsessed with the numbers and the why, as opposed to the results so much, about why or how did this happen, or why did they do this way. And this is sort of depressing. This is a different feeling. I feel very depressed looking at these numbers. So I hope that Christopher Nolan is satisfied with the results. And I hope that anyone who went to go see the movie is safe and healthy and had a good time seeing the movie and enjoyed themselves and didn't feel like they wasted their time. I enjoyed going to see the movie. I didn't waste my time. I might actually go see the movie again, like go see like a afternoon showing, because I had a pretty rough time going to see it the night I saw it, just because college came back and there was a shitload of college kids everywhere. But I'll see you guys for BOA 105. Box Office Addict is back. Your drug addiction is here. If you are a fan of the show, you're an addict of the box office, and I am here to encourage that addiction. I am not here to help you with it, and hopefully I can get back to live streaming here soon. My ban gets lifted tomorrow. Yeah. So I'll be able to live stream here again soon. So, yeah, I'd like to talk about The Boys Season 2. I'm going to be talking about that from a week-to-week basis once the episodes go to a weekly. I saw the first 3, thought they were really good. Didn't love it as much as the first season so far, but I've only seen 3 episodes, so can't fully judge it yet. And hopefully I will get back to podcasting and doing some live streams soon. I've added soundproof foam all around the room here. Well, I'm in process of adding it. I haven't added it over in the room. I've been slowly adding it to the room. And I've got my mic stand here. That probably made a lot of noise. Which, the mic stand's it's not done yet. I have to get a screw for the fucking microphone. I have to get an adapter. It's bullshit. But yeah, I'm trying to work on better audio and video and more consistent uploads for you guys. I've been spending a lot of time the last few weeks trying to make a little studio here to where it'd be much easier for me to record and release videos on a more consistent basis. And now that movies are being released again and there's stuff to talk about, there will be more content from the channel. So please stay tuned, spread the word, and we'll all get through this together.